Welcome to the January 7th Board of Ed workshop. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So that brings us to our first public comment section. Does anyone have any public comments for the agenda items only? No? Okay, then we'll move on to our central office report, which brings us to our annual special services report. I don't know if you want to bring up Stacy, or I should, or whichever.
Stacy? Stacy will present the, Stacy Antonin will present the annual special education report.
Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Thanks for giving me some time this evening to discuss our special education programs and state data. Some of what I'm going to present tonight is based on the current school year, 24-25, and other data like state performance indicators is going to be based on the 23-24 school year and can be found at data.niced.gov, which is also on the slide for anybody watching at home. As we know, the New York State data sites are always a little bit slower than the current year. So they're up to 23-24 reporting. First slide. So this first slide just shows our current classification rates and numbers of students by category. Once students are school age, their IEP needs to reflect one of the 13 areas of disability. Students are tested with standardized measures every 3 years, which helps us monitor progress and growth. We also measure progress and growth based on the goals that are proposed each year at the annual review, and that's when we create the goals and IEP for the following year. As you can see from this chart, close to 40% of our students are classified with learning disabilities. Speech and language and other health impairment make up another close to 50%. The last 10% encompasses things like autism, intellectual disability, emotional disability, and then others like vision or hearing impaired, orthopedically impaired, or multiple disabilities. There are a total of 531 students classified this year. 465 of those children are in district in our K-12 schools. 41 are out of district or homebound, and 25 are parentally placed, and that also includes children at Kennedy Catholic. We are the district of location for Kennedy Catholic, so we are responsible for providing the special education services. So any students who get speech, counseling, or a learning center through a special education teacher, we provide that service to those students.
Stacy?
Yes.
Can you just clarify one thing?
Sure.
You said 40% of our students are classified with a learning disability?
Close to.
That's 40% of our students that have an IEP?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Correct.
So of the
Not 40,
531
out of the
students.
531, yes, not our total population. I'm only talking about IEPs. Sorry. Thank you for the clarifying question, Chris. The next slide, this slide shows classification rates for Somers and the Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES districts last year and this year. You might remember, I know you guys memorized my presentation from last year, so you might remember that last year what I was mentioning is that we were only one of 4 districts who increased in the classification rate. But this year, if you look, we've remained flat at 20%, and we're one of 7 districts who've also remained flat, and everyone else has gone up. The only exception is Putt Valley, who went down 1%. The reason I'm highlighting that is because even though we might be a bit higher in terms of classification rate than other places, neighboring districts and the state overall is increasing in this. So we are not alone in that. On the next slide, I'm going to start to go into the state performance indicators. Several of these are assessed every year. This comes from data that we provide to the state through IEPs and our student information systems. I'm going to explain what each indicator is briefly, and then particularly on indicators 1 and 2, I do need to make a note. But overall, what I want you to know as a board and as a community is that we are meeting the criteria and oftentimes exceeding it for what the state expects for performance indicators for special education programming. So indicator 1 is graduation rate, and indicator 2 is dropout rate. You can see that what how I've broken it down is it's what the state criteria is, then what SOMER's numbers look like, and then a simple yes or no, did we meet criteria? So the state guidelines for state indicators of assessment for students with special needs is 71% graduation rate. We are at 95 point, I can't read my own writing up there, I'm so sorry because it's far away.
8.8.
8.
95.8.
Thank you. So, and I do need to put a caveat there because that means that we have a 4.25 dropout rate, which would be 2 students. But what's important to note is the state only takes into account when children stay for a 6-year graduation, and we have some that stay for 7 till age 21. And last year and this year, we have students staying till 22 because that was the new advice from the state. So those students are not reflected, nor are the students that may have, those 2 students more than likely went to BOCES to get GEDs. Those are not considered in the graduation rates. So our graduation rate is actually closer to that 100% mark.
And then the 95.8% is this percentage of classified students
Correct.
or all students? Okay, so we're still
Correct.
only talking about classified.
Correct.
And then I guess my other question is just, so when you talk, so for 21, if they turn 20, you get to keep them for the whole school year while they're 21, right? It's not like they
Correct.
turn 21 and we have to.
That is correct. And additionally, now the new guidance is, and they're still talking
I know,
about
there's
this at
an
the
appeal
state
in the
level, but till
process.
22, and the advice is similar. Like, it's not that they stay till their 22nd birthday and then see you later. They stay for the whole year in which they're turning 22. And we have a couple of students right now that are doing that. When the parents were asked, they did take advantage of that and are staying for their 22nd year with us.
Okay.
Yep. Number 3 is always a challenge for our district. It's getting better. It asks 2 things. It's participation and mastery on state assessments. For mastery, we do meet criteria, but for participation, we still do not. The state would like to see greater than or equal to 95% participation. We do not have 95% participation rate of our students. I think that's true of with and without IEPs, but I'm
believe
talking
you're
about
right.
students with IEPs. You know, and I can explain why, right? The children who have IEPs go through a lot of testing. Their teachers know where their strengths and weaknesses are. Many of those parents don't feel the need to have their child sit through yet another assessment to know that they're behind. And so we honor that request because parents are allowed to refuse testing. So and that is still happening. And therefore for participation, we are not. We don't meet criteria, but for those who do take it, they are meeting mastery.
So 78% of the 400 and
65.
thank you, 465 students are participating.
Correct.
What's the mastery level then? Because that's not.
It would need to be a level 3 if it was a 3 through 8 test, or it would need to be passing a Regents exam.
Okay. So it's not a percentage piece.
Correct.
You're saying.
Now, question on the speech part, the number of students reduced, but the hours increased quite a bit. Is that due to our law? Or?
So is it
When
okay
we
if I
get
wait till
there,
that slide
yeah.
till I answer that? I absolutely will answer that.
Sorry, I jumped ahead.
It's coming, I promise.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, speech numbers are coming. So the other indicator is there are protections for students with IEPs that if they are suspended, they cannot be suspended more than 10 days without having what's called a manifestation determination to see if their disability is the reason for the suspensions. If it is found to be the reason for it, then pieces are added to the IEP, and we have a CSE meeting as part of that manifestation determination. So what they want to know is, are students with disabilities disproportionately suspended? And then are there any races or ethnicities of disabled students who are disproportionately suspended? And the answer to those is we are not over suspending students with disabilities, and we are not over suspending any students of a particular race or ethnicity. Does that make sense? How I said it? Okay. This next indicator, number 5, 5 and 6 talk about least restrictive environment. 5 is for K-12 students, 6 is for preschool students. We've been at this level for a long time. Somers really does try to have most of their students in a least restrictive environment, and by that we mean spending as much of the day as is appropriate for their particular needs with their non-disabled peers. That's what we mean when we say least restrictive environment. The state would like to see greater than or equal to 58%. We have 65% of our students with IEPs spending the majority of their day, and they break it down by 80% or more, 40% or more, all of that. But we have 65% of our students are spending their time with majority of their day with their non-disabled peers. So we are meeting criteria there. You'll notice the criteria for preschool is slightly less. It's only at close to 40%, greater than or equal to. And the reason for that is preschool students tend to be placed in more restrictive environments because they want to give them as much intensive support as they can, so that often by kindergarten or grade 3, sometimes is the case, they can then be in a less restrictive environment. The state recognizes this as well, which is why their criteria is only at 40% for preschool, where it's closer to 60 for school age.
So do you determine that based on the number on the IEP, like timing-wise, as to
Yes.
what kind of classes they're in?
Yes, and so a lot of times on the IEP, after it's all the time on the IEP, after a program is listed or a related service is listed, something called TORC is also represented, TORC, time out of regular classroom, and that percentage is what's reported to the state, and that is what creates these percentages and numbers. Yes. The last indicators, 9 and 10, are also disproportionality for both being classified and then also classified in a particular area. So we are not over-classifying anybody, our students of different races and ethnicities. No one race is over or underrepresented, and there's no one category of classification out of the 13 that's over or underrepresented. And the last one is just that we test our 3-year-olds as they're leaving early intervention and coming into CPSC by the time they turn 3 years old. These indicators only happen every 6 years, and the reason for that is because we actually pull actual IEPs. We have to write notes about them and then submit the actual stack of papers to Albany for them to do a paper review. We just finished this year the secondary transition and post-secondary outcomes, and we met criteria and we're compliant with both of those. Those are aspects of the child's IEP that occur when they are 15, and at that time, the IEP includes 2 new sections that talk about a child's goals after high school and what things they may need to reach those goals. So a student may have a goal of going to college to study art, and they may have a plan to live on campus or live at home and commute. And those are just things we start to talk about. Obviously not set in stone when they're 15, but it does happen every year from 15 on, so that by the time they do graduate, they've had help and support to make those goals a reality. Okay, now Ife, here comes your chance. Okay, so these last 2 slides that I have, I feel are important because I feel they have budgetary impact. And the first one is increasing needs of students. So what you have on the left is our students from 18-19, and on the right you have this current year, 24-25. As you can see, in 18-19, we had 481 students, and this year we have 465 students, right? So in in 6 years, we've only gone down 16 classified students, K-12. So even though enrollment is going down, our classified numbers have not gone down at the same rate. And on these charts, the orange bars represent the number of students, and the green bars represent the number of hours per month that all of those students receive of that service per month. You can see some things have gone up a little more, not so drastically. Counseling's gone up a little bit, hours have gone up a little bit. But children getting OT has gone down by 6 kids, but the number of hours has increased 123 hours. So the ability of students to use their fine motor and gross motor skills, and in particular, speech and language skills, we're seeing many more students with apraxia of language, which is very complex. It's not only articulation, but it's also the processing of language, and it's motor planning of the mouth. So that requires, if our practitioners are very good about studying the latest trends, and we even sometimes work with outside providers that are specialists in these trends, talk about the level of service and the amount of support that is needed to, I'm not going to say cure, because you're never cured of things like apraxia, but to accommodate and remediate as much as possible so that the child has the best chance of communicating as close to their typical peers as they can. So there's a lot of new research. There's new studies about different types of, in particular, speech, language, and language disorders. We know that the mental health of our students can be variable these days, and so mental health supports have increased. And so the reason I show this is I want you to see the numbers of classified students getting these services, but I also want you to know that this doesn't even reflect the building level supports that our school counselors and psychologists, speech, PT, and OT give to children without documents. So particularly in up K through 3, when children come in and they have misarticulation errors, they may not have an IEP, but we screen them for building level service. So that's still the speech people, right? Along with their numbers of mandated kids that have IEPs, they're also supporting students that may not have an IEP that have articulation difficulties. And that's something we've tried to keep in place even with the increased mandates of our special education students. So the numbers have increased, but I want you to know that the numbers that are up there don't even tell, they only tell part of the story as well.
Well, and forgive me, I think we've brought on more speech therapists in the past 2 years.
So
in the past, correct?
We increased by 1 speech therapist.
Okay.
And I have 4 speech therapists down in Primrose, right? That's where really
Right.
the rubber hits the road. You want to hit children as soon as possible with services if they're having language and articulation difficulties. So over time, do you see the numbers of students decrease? Yes, Primrose is my highest number right now. And then as students come up through SIS and SMS, we have several that get declassified from that service. In fact, I tease the speech team that whoever does the most reevals and declassifies gets a pizza party. But I don't really give them the pizza. We joke about it. But it is a credit to our speech team that over the time, because of the services the children are getting and the intensity and the research that those people do, my speech team does, and how much they collaborate with each other, that we are able to declassify so many students as they go from K through 8. Because some children come in with some pretty significant delays.
There's also a decrease in the building level services as the students move from Primrose into SIS and SMS.
Correct.
Also.
We only provide speech and language articulation support at grades K through 3. If children are still struggling with articulation, after that, we have a conversation with parents about private speech therapy. We just can't manage it with the mandates that we have. But we do provide it K through 3.
And I'd imagine by tackling the problem as much as you can, it allows access for these kids to enter into a least restrictive environment on a higher basis.
Yeah, so the need for related services doesn't necessarily indicate where your classroom placement is going to be.
True.
We do have some students, for example, at Primrose, we have a class of students, an 812 group, and many of those students are using augmented communication devices. They just happen to be a cadre of students who needs that support, and so they're using devices, and so their speech mandate and their intensity of support is going to be more individualized, right? You're only going to see one child at a time because their ability to use their device is going to be very individual. And then you're going to see them more often because if they're nonverbal or limited verbal, you want to provide as much support you can for allowing them to communicate. And if that needs to be with a device, then it's with a device.
A question. On the speech part, we are only talking about English speech, right? Not sort of differentiate native speech or English speech in this classification or rating.
So these services are provided in English for our students who are ENL students, where English as a new language. There are other teachers that provide that support, and students may be getting both. We do have some
when
students.
When you say K-3, the young children, do we have different classification for, just speech therapists, just for, general, the native speech, whatever your speech, or English related only? I mean, that's somewhat different, right?
I'm not sure if I'm fully understanding your question. What we are
how we classify the speech special education in terms of category. Do we have that students say their native speech language is, let's say, Spanish? Mm-hmm. If they have needs for special education, we are supposed to provide?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when we evaluate students for whom their first language is not English, we provide a bilingual eval so that we can see where any delays are in both languages. If a student is, let's say, a Spanish-speaking student, and their speech testing shows that they need speech and language support, it is supposed to be provided by a bilingual speech therapist.
So it's our responsibility.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I want to know.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because we have to differentiate between whether or not it's a learning disability or if it's a language challenge based on the fact that English is not their native language.
Correct, which is why we do the bilingual evaluations to ascertain, because when you get a bilingual evaluation, what that evaluator will do is they will say they are delayed in both their native language as well as English, and they will make recommendations for how to remediate that. But it's only fair for that child to assess in both languages, because you don't want it to be skewed one way if you're only doing it English when they may have other skills in their native language, in their home language.
And I guess just to be clear, and I don't want to keep beating the same thing, but ENL services are not the same as speech.
Correct.
Classified.
Different certifications, yep. Different support, yep.
Correct.
And you do not have an IEP. You do not need to have an IEP to get ENL support.
Right. Exactly.
You can have an IEP and get ENL support.
That's
So,
a
yep.
curriculum issue, yeah.
On slide number 2, with the total classified students,
Yes.
out of district, does that mean we're sending 41 kids out of district, or we're bringing 41 kids in from out
No,
of
we
the
are
district?
sending 41 kids out.
Okay. And on,
That includes residential and day.
gotcha. On slide number 5, it says disproportionate representation of racial and ethnic groups and classified student numbers. Can you explain that? Like, what is?
Yeah.
What does race and ethnical groups have to do with SPED?
The state wants to make sure that, for example, if 10% of your population was Asian, that you're not classifying, all 12%, because in other words, they don't want you to have bias in your classification process. They want a process that is the same for everyone, and they want, for example, if someone is speaking a different language, for it to be bilingual, so that you're making sure you're testing and you're not making assumptions that just because a child speaks a different language or is a different race, that they're automatically going to be classified. So they don't want to see in the numbers that we show to the state that there's disproportionate numbers of students in those other ethnic groups or races being overclassified.
Okay. Well, how would that work for a school that's more diverse?
They base it on the percentage of your total
Okay.
for every school. Yep. So on my final slide, I want to just give you some highlights and notable things happening. You might remember, again, I know you all memorized my presentation from last year. I was talking last year about how we would need to bring a new skip class to this building. We do have that. It is an 811 class, currently with 7 students. Just on a little, I don't know, hooray note for us, one of those students, for the first time in his academic career, after being homebound and hospitalized, was able to join that class. And so this is the first time that child is in a school setting, and we're really very thrilled about that because that's less restrictive, right, than homebound or a hospital setting. And it looks like for next year we will need an additional skip teacher at SIS. The reason we know this is because the number of students coming from Primrose, we only have one classroom there right now, 1212 skip class at SIS, and we know that the number of students coming up from Primrose is greater than the number of students leaving SIS to come to 6th grade. So we already know that we will be over that number, and so we need to look at having another teacher, which also means because these students tend to need more support and smaller classroom environment, even if we make it another 1212, that is automatically a teacher and 2 TAs. And that's in addition to whoever of the students has a shared aid or a one-to-one aid. So I just want to put that out there. Additionally, we have a special education parent handbook now. It was sent to all special education families this summer, and we're working on getting it ADA compliant with B.O.E so it can be easily accessed on our website. My 2 SEPTA co-presidents, I meet with them every month, and they shared with me last month that the number of phone calls that they have to field with questions has gone down drastically since this resource was sent out. So I want to just thank all the parents and teachers that worked with me on that subcommittee to get this created, because I do think it has a lot of important information. Also, we increased this year our co-teach offerings. We have co-teach classes in all 4 core subjects: English, math, science, and social studies in all 3 grades in this building. This was the first year we've done that in a while. The new co-teach partnerships attended a workshop together this summer, led by a longstanding team here at the middle school. And that continued with additional sessions this fall for those teams of new co-teacher partnerships. And this is a model that we hope to continue moving forward. Additionally, a litigation has been resolved, and as part of such resolution, the district will continue to provide annual training to its school bus attendants and monitors regarding working with students with special needs. And the district will initiate specific training on working with nonverbal students.
Thank you, Stace. I have a quick question on the co-teach and learning classes offered. I think it's so great that you've expanded it in the middle schools so that it's all 4 core subjects, so that way you have that ability to have that lesser restrictive environment for students for both science and social studies now, where before it was more of a consultant teach model. Correct. And such. So you were saying that the co-teach workshops that they go to, it's led by us, the professional development is led by us here in-house? Okay.
It is, yes.
But that's, I'm assuming though, we still, have that training model, like we pay the teachers to come here and do that over the summer kind of thing.
Yes, that was part of their summer in-service work.
Service work, great.
Just to follow up with Amanda, do you think we're getting to the point where we have enough staffing for our school's needs?
So, I just shared that we're going to need another teacher and 2 TAs, so no. I think,
looking at you, Chris.
I know, Chris, I don't look at Chris when I say those words. If you think about it, I was trying to make the math a little simpler. We have 49 special education teachers in the district right now.
49, wow.
For, across K-12, for 465 kids. right? So if you do that division, it's about 10 kids per teacher. But we also know that some of our classes are only 812s. We have 3 812 classes. So really, most of our settings, once you hit 12 kids in a particular setting, you need a teacher. And some of our special ed teachers, particularly at the high school, do double duty. They teach at both the alt school or in their departments as well as doing special ed. So it's not, I'm saying 49 bodies, but it's, really 45 point, I can't cut a person in half, but you know what I'm saying. Like, they do other things besides special education. And also at the secondary level, there is now law that, I forget how old it is now, maybe 5 years old, where if you are teaching a special class in math or English in grades 7 through 12, you need to have dual certification. You must have special education and English and or math. So it's a very specific certification that the state is looking for, and very specific numbers that we put on IEPs. So it is legally binding, and so we have to always. So every year I try to look at that. I try to shuffle around where I can, and then sometimes we do need to hire more staff. I try.
They're grandfathered in, though, if they already have the K through 12 special ed certification, right, Harry? If I know you know this question.
for the dual cert, you mean for the
right? So
yeah.
you don't have to be. It's not retroactive, I guess, is what I'm trying to.
No, the state gave us a very small window within which people that were already doing that and teaching that, we could get them that certification based on their years of experience. But I will also share that some of those people are, retiring and things like that. So now we have to look at, and anyone new coming on board who we're replacing does need to have the actual dual cert.
Now, currently, are we extending the IEP service to pre-K? We don't, right?
So do you mean an RUPK or just
Yeah,
generally
my
pre-K students?
My question actually is this. In your professional opinion,
Yes.
would we say offer early IEP extended to pre-K?
Oh, we
would
do.
be helpful
yeah.
to reduce in terms of the speech, special education later on, as you see the number of hours you require is growing, right?
Yes.
So in your professional opinion, would that be helpful if we start early in pre-K?
So not only in my professional opinion, but the law says that we
law.
have to. We do.
The
So
kid hits 3.
we don't. So the county pays for
Pre-K,
the
yeah.
providers and pre-K, but we hold all of the IEPs and do all of the and get all of the paperwork going and send out parents to different agencies to get them assessed. And so we are providing pre-K services for children ages 3-4.
Okay, then second question is, do we see advantage if we emphasize more or pay attention more to that aspect?
So I will share that, yes. So last year we had 77 students that were receiving IEP services at age 4. Only 27 of whom came into kindergarten still requiring service. So yes, absolutely, we want to keep preschool services going. Early intervention is very key, which is why I don't mind having 4 speech therapists at Primrose, because I want those issues addressed for children as early as possible, so that as we go up, like for example, I only have 1 speech therapist here. So that just lets you know how many students are remediated in their speech needs by the time they get up to grades 6, 7, 8.
Shouldn't we then sort of promote this knowledge to the community about, this?
I don't feel like we have any lack of referrals to special education, pre-K or K-12. I think
Well, under the
parents are
Child
good at
Find
reaching
Law,
out.
we're obligated
I mean,
by
the
law
family,
to find them.
Yes.
parents certainly, if they are aware of these things early on and, in a cooperative sense, would help for their families as well for schools, right?
Yeah, and many of the children come to CPSC through early intervention, because you can get services through the county as early as 2 months old, 6 months old. So some children are already receiving those services in the home before they even come to us through preschool. So there's definitely a robust, not enough providers, but a robust CPSC process and aspect in place. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Just for the benefit of some of the public, there's a lot of specialized language that's associated with special education. Could you just tell us what SKIP and the 8-1-1 and 12
So sorry. Yes, I will.
ratios refer to, just for the benefit of people who are
Thank you for
watching at
asking the
home?
question. I appreciate it. So SKIP stands for Self-Contained Instructional Program. It is on an IEP, it would be listed as 812 or 1212 or 1213, and that means the first number is the number of students to one teacher, and then how many assistants are associated with the class. And many of those students, if they're in a more self-contained instructional program, their special class 1212, 812 is, you're going to see more hours of the day where they're in that more specialized environment. But even students in our 812, which is the most restrictive environment we have here in-house, are spending portions of their day with their general education peers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking the question.
And just real quick, to go back to the 41 students who were placed out of district.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the programs that, I mean, those are typically very highly specialized programs because we can't provide them here. I guess for the benefit of everyone, could you kind of give a general overview
Sure.
of the types of programs those are typically?
So I will tell you, I'll try to do this without getting too specific because
Right, I don't
we
want you
can't
to-
do it, without noise. But I will tell you that a quarter of those students are residential, which means that their social, emotional, and learning and behavioral needs are such that a day program is not enough for them. They need residential supports, behavioral supports. Sometimes there are, sometimes, not all the time, there are substance abuse issues associated with that need the support of a residential placement so that the students are being more supervised. Sometimes the behavioral aspect of the students can be physical, where they also require the support of more specialized staff in order to both make sure the child is supervised and safe, but then also to provide education. The day program students that we have, sometimes there's a more specialized program. For example, there may be a very ABA, Applied Behavioral Analysis program that is a daily structure of a class program for students with significant autism. And the behaviors and the needs of those students may be such that they need a smaller and more therapeutic ABA environment. We do not have a straight ABA class. We do have behaviorists that come and support some of our students, but I wouldn't say that we have a class that is just an ABA class. And sometimes students need that level of support, or maybe there's only 6 students in it, or we don't really have any kids in smaller than that, but where they need that plus a one-to-one aid in order to run that program, and all of their learning happens through that very discrete trial, keeping charts of books of what they're doing in applied behavioral analysis. So not only that, when I say behavior, I don't just mean how they're acting, I also mean their academic behavior and the skills they're learning.
Great. Yeah, I just wanted to be clear that it wasn't, for the want of not having them back in district.
Correct.
It's really a matter of, we wouldn't be able to provide that kind of service at this time.
Yeah, and
In
we
a
have
public
some
school
kids.
setting, it's challenging.
Correct. And we have a couple of students who are homebound because of different needs too, and we're providing education to them in that setting as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. This brings us to our board discussion on regionalization. I think Harry's going to start us off.
Sure. The Regionalization Initiative is a collaborative regional planning approach for local districts to communicate what they need in order to ensure equitable education opportunities for all students, leveraging the state's existing capabilities, talent, and infrastructure. By engaging in regional conversations, schools and districts may identify, explore, and choose whether to pursue a variety of possible solutions to the academic and operational challenges they face by tapping into the full span of resources that already exist in the larger region. That's the definition of regionalization as it's presented on the state website, on the SED website. Okay, basically what it's saying is that the component districts of each of the 37 different BOCES districts needs to look at how they might be able to work better together to serve the students in their district. In Stacy's presentation, you saw the component districts for Putnam, Northern Westchester BOCES, because those are the ones that we compared our figures with. So at Putnam, Northern Westchester BOCES, we, the 18 component districts, work very well together and will continue to do so. In fact, last month when Commissioner Rosa was at the town hall meeting, she referred specifically to some of the excellent collaborative work. Mary Fox Alter, superintendent at Ossining, David Mauricio, superintendent at Peekskill, and Ray Sanchez, the superintendent at Tarrytown, have done over the last several years. Just she highlighted for the group there some of that excellent collaborative work that they've been doing. The genesis of this initiative was to look at ways to preserve or expand opportunities for all students while facing potential reductions in state aid to school districts. Last year, the governor proposed a reduction in foundation aids to schools by eliminating the Save Harmless clause that would have impacted almost 50% of the school districts in New York State, including Somers. Somers was one of the districts that would have been impacted. The possibility still exists this year, and districts haven't yet received the preliminary numbers for state aid. So we're starting to build our budget without numbers for state aid, particularly the foundation aid, but we kind of know that we may not get as much as we have in the past, which is a difficult situation. There was a 60-day public comment period following the notice of emergency adoption and proposed rule-making proposal to the P12 Education Committee in September. The State Education Department received over 9,500 comments regarding the proposed amendment, and some non-substantial revisions were made to the proposal following that comment period. SED recognized that there were some issues with the messaging, the initiative, and that the name was a significant concern to many people throughout the state, as was the requirement for mandatory participation in the planning process. SED also recognized that there was a lot of misinformation and malinformation about the initiative being spread on social media. Over the months between September and December, the Education Department posted many documents on regionalization to their website. We, the Somers Central School District, posted the same information to our website under the new tab, Current Topics, under Community drop-down tab. Included in those documents is a slide deck entitled Regionalization Plans in New York State that shares very clear information on the initiative. And you can look at that on our website if you want, or on the state website. I'm not going to go through it. This information was reiterated and confirmed by Commissioner Rosa at the Education Town Hall at Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES last month, including the opportunity for districts to opt out of the entire process if they so desire. I've been involved in the discussion on regionalization since late September through my meetings with my superintendent colleagues in the region and through reading materials provided by the New York State Education Department on the topic, and through participation in the Education Town Hall with Commissioner Betty Rosa at Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. I was joined at the Education Town Hall by Board President Amanda Candell and trustees Pat Verbaro and Margaret DiLorenzo, who will share their opinions as part of the board discussion very shortly. My recommendation is that the district continue to move forward with the participation in the regionalization process. At this point, we need to complete the strengths and needs tool and then participate in the convenings at Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. There's potential for benefit to the district, and I really don't see anything that would be detrimental to the district at this point. So I turn that over to the board for discussion of the topic.
I don't know if Margaret and Pat want to start off with their impressions from when we met with the commissioner. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just start, and then it'll be a conversation. I thought Commissioner Rosa did an excellent job explaining everything in person, and I liked the way that regionalization could really help small school districts in the state of New York and help them have like a power of one with their resources, and that would help small remote school districts that really need to have like just more collective wisdom that some of our larger school districts have. So I like the premise of it, and I like the fact that we can fill out the assessment, and at a certain point we can decide whether it's right for us or not. And as you can see, Stacy mentioned that we have 41 students already out of district getting services. And who knows, maybe there are some special ed opportunities as a part of regionalization. And I know that we're already doing a form of regionalization in Westchester and Putnam with our sports programs and with BOCES and all of our neighbors. We have really good relationships with our neighboring school districts. So those are just some of my thoughts, just to get it moving.
Pat?
So when I got from the conversation, and I asked specifically, and I can't remember his name. He's second to Betty.
Neil.
Oh, no,
Speak
the
over the mic.
deputy commissioner. was there. I don't remember his name.
I had asked him if we were able to opt out of the entire process or step by step, which he said yes. We could opt out of the entire process. There would be no repercussions. And if we wanted to opt out now, we could always get back into it later on down the road. Which I don't think is a bad idea. Being this year that we're in a transition period, we're looking for a superintendent. I think things really need to be focused on that and to get our district back to where it needs to be. I personally think that opting out now would be okay, and if let that ball get rolling on their end, see how things turn out, and we could always jump back in and opt into it at a later point once we get our district to where it needs to be.
Well, my take on it was that it doesn't really commit us to anything if we continue on in the process. It just takes us away from the table. We're not, I think what's important is that it's not a reorganization of school districts. It's not merging school districts. I think that's a very clear concept, because I agree, if that was something that was happening, I would not be for that at all. But that's not what this is at all, and it's been reiterated many, many times over on that. So I think as long as we're comfortable in saying no during the planning process, let me back up a minute. I think going through this planning process, we don't have to commit to anything in the plan that we don't want to commit to. They can't force us to do anything that we don't want to do. So we could be part of the conversation, hear what everyone has to say, and say, hey, that might benefit us, or if it doesn't benefit us, we don't have to agree to it. It's a very a la carte kind of menu, meaning that the whole region of the Northern Westchester Putnam BOCES, the 18 component school districts can get together and say, we want to do X, Y, and like 3 of them can say, we want to do X, Y, and Z, and 15 of them can say, not for us, and that's okay. So I think as long as we're comfortable with saying no, and I think we are, if it doesn't benefit us, then we can go forward on that. Because I think, for instance, a perfect example is, we're about to consolidate with, not consolidate, that's a bad choice of words. We're about to bring our North Salem students in for the football team next year in order to keep us in our certain class, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a kind of an example of regionalization, as Margaret was saying. It really seems to be kind of a formalization of the process that we're already doing, and more in a systemic way. And I think our region is a very active region, that we already kind of do a lot of this work to begin with. So there's so many great opportunities already that are available with BOCES. I know the high schoolers are going next week, if they want to tour and see different opportunities that are available, going forward. That those are all programs that we wouldn't be able to provide here at Somers High School on our smaller scale. So who knows? And I think the other piece of it that I took away from it was that it's not just coming up with the regionalization plan, but it's also talking about the second step in the process of putting forth things to Albany in the state that we would want to prioritize as school districts if we had the resources to do them. So we could get together with some of the other school districts and say, hey, in our area, this is what we really need out of the budget and the money, but we don't have the resources to do it. Can you guys look at our region? Because it might not be appropriate for another region in our school district. Our state's very big, and there's a lot of differences in needs and wants of the different communities around our state. So I don't see the downside of staying in right now, but that's my opinion. And we could always, like I said, we don't have to commit to anything, even going forward in the regionalization process, in the planning process. We don't have to commit to any activities going forward.
Right, all we have to do is complete the assessment
The survey.
forms, which is probably 90% done. Complete that and then participate in the convenings where we get to share our wants and needs with the other districts who are participating. So if we were to opt out, we wouldn't have that input. And when the plan, the regionalization plan for Putnam, Northern Westchester, BOCES is reported out, and we find that there are things in there that we would like to participate in, we can do that. As Pat said, we can always opt back in, but we didn't have our voice heard in the formation of it. And it's that contribution as a district that I see as important.
I know there have been concerns through this about erosion of local control. I think going through, I know everything I've read and learned about it. I think we've heard from our school attorney even that there's no erosion of local control. There's no requirement put on us to pay for out-of-district services for
And Commissioner
anything.
Rosa was very specific about
Right.
that in her responses
Yeah.
last month.
Is there any disadvantage this initial process of, which I think it sounds like we're probably 90% of the way? I mean, what's the workload left on that?
That's up to Liz and Tara. They have a few more hours to put together. It was a very robust document that we had to respond to, and but significant portion of that's completed. So we'll have it done by the 15th.
And I think in the latest December 2nd memo, which is also on our website, I think 70% of the school districts in the state have already completed the survey.
Yeah.
I don't know what the percentage is in Northern Westchester, BOCES in particular. I don't know if you know, Harry.
Actual percentage, I do not know. I know that a number of the districts, component districts, have completed. But when I was at the meeting just before the break, probably 2/3 were at that point. But many were on pause as
To find out
find out how
right.
the district was going to go after the board discussed it at their public meeting. So those who had completed it were sitting, and those who were in pause are waiting till their meeting. So again, Liz and Tara will pick up the work after the board makes its decision.
What could be this is what I'm trying to imagine partly from this too. What would be an example? Is there something we can imagine that we would say, yeah, you know what? That would be a benefit to us, that for our students, for our district, that would want to, partner in some type of a program that maybe we can't offer. Is that kind of what the thought might potentially be if there's anything that develops out of it? I mean, I understand, I think it's a great point about having our voice in the initial part of the process. I think you don't really want to miss that, because then you have no idea what opportunities are going to come out. But can you imagine any type of opportunity or situation where we might say as a district, yeah, that could be a real benefit that otherwise we can't provide?
Well, expansion of some of the BOCES programs, and by working together with the other component districts, we might find that there's some shared experiences that would benefit all of our students that aren't yet available through BOCES. But BOCES has its own expansion plan in the works, and they're looking at enhancing the CTEC program and making changes to some of their buildings on the Fox Meadow campus. And by expanding that, we would have some input for Somers.
Is this the type of thing that might be, you know, say we have 2 students that top out all their math classes, that maybe there is some specific math class offered by another district that would be something they could participate in? I mean, is that the type of
It
thing
could
that
be.
potentially
It could
could
be.
come out of it?
I don't even know
could
if
be
it's
a-
limited to the school districts. I think it sounds like they're trying to even partner with like community
Right, community
organizations,
organizations and that,
potentially
yeah.
like
Yeah.
colleges.
Right, with colleges also. But,
I'm just trying to brainstorm,
yeah.
try to
Yeah, no, that would
imagine.
be part of the planning process.
Virtual classrooms, they could expand certain areas to students where we wouldn't have enough students to require a staff member. But we could offer extended classes through a virtual platform with other districts.
Now, Margaret mentioned this seems more beneficial to the smaller schools and the more rural areas with the smaller budgets. My concern is they're going to get priority, especially now with state funding and figuring out what we're getting. They're going to get priority over a school like ours with a larger budget and a stronger tax base.
But they would have their own regionalization plan. It would not impact us. We would be part of the 18 component districts in Putnam, Northern Westchester, BOCES, and we put our plan together for us. It would not have any impact on school districts upstate for Somers. It would only be within the Putnam, Northern Westchester component districts. Now, there may be a situation where Southern Westchester BOCES, Rockland BOCES, Putnam, Northern Westchester BOCES combine for potential benefit to the region, but that's something that would come from the process, the convenings. So it's hard to say what it might be, but by participating in those meetings, we would have a voice.
I have a question. Do
Well,
you think
I think
wait one
we
second.
hung up with
Do you think that participating in those meetings would help our special ed students as well, especially the ones that have to go out of district for very specific needs, or is that handled differently?
I couldn't say that for sure. I think that is, Stacy would have a better handle on that.
I think those BOCES programs are very specific already, but
Well, the fact that we are debating means that regionalization, this term, is not well defined and could be used as umbrella. It could be used as a specific program. And I think for us in this, as the board, I think simple thing to do is leave these indecision to let people really come up with a concrete program. If something specifically, say in the special ed area, regionalization is already going. There's a lot of proposals BOCES is doing is helping the 18 school district and so on. So those things come on, people join in, it's just natural process. I don't know whether we have to hang up with this, giving people umbrella situation. I think there's no need for that. If anybody has good idea, propose it as a resolution to the state can adopt, and every school board can, adopt, that's fine. So I really, in this point, I don't think we will lose anything if we say, no, forget about it, because it's just a vague term that we don't really know how to grapple with it. This
Well,
is my
it's-
opinion. I would just say we let them decide whatever comes next. We can vote when
well, it's
really
defined in
concrete.
it's defined in the regionalization, like it's defined in the regulation. But in any event, I think the point is that I think everyone agrees that it was a poor choice of words. That
Yeah,
regionalization was a
just-
bad wording because it gave an impression to a lot of people, and they started interchanging words like merger and reorganization, and that's not what it is. But the horse had kind of already left the barn before they had that feedback, so they weren't gonna, they were like, there's no way we're rebranding it. I mean, they specifically actually,
I'm not fearful of it. I don't,
Yeah.
I understand, I don't see this as some
No,
secret
let
umbrella. I
the
think
state
I think
do
it's actually
something
been
more
very
concrete.
clear and very well understood that it's not that. But, I just want to make sure that we don't like spend a lot of resources on it if we think that we're not going to get something from it. But I like your point of getting our voice in on the beginning. I think that's important to not miss out on that. And we'll see what comes with it. We know we're not required to participate in anything beyond that. But if we don't have our voice right in the initial part, then we don't know what kind of options are going to come out.
Correct.
So I'm supportive of.
Yeah. What's
Sticking with
the
that.
advantage of opting out if we can opt out on any part we don't want to be involved in, right?
right, it doesn't commit us to anything in the long term.
One way
Doesn't
or
take
the
away
other.
any authority, doesn't take away any control.
We waste time on.
Yeah, well, it's not much time left. It's,
Well, because
Well,
we have to
they're
make a
forcing the vote
decision.
by the 15th.
Yeah, they're forcing us to
Which
make a
th-
decision.
That's the concerns.
Well,
won't
we
be-
send them a message. Even we have a divided vote, it's a message. It doesn't
But
matter.
we don't know how any of the other districts have voted. I'm assuming they're voting today or at some point, well, fairly soon.
I would presume they're voting at their board meetings if they have not done so already.
we know 70% in districts have already completed their strengths and needs.
That was a number from
That was
last
from a
month.
while ago.
Yes, last
Yeah.
month.
So it's
They
probably
all
a lot
pro
higher.
for it? Not all of them are pro, right?
Pardon me?
70
They
all
just did,
pro?
they just did.
They just did the
assessment.
strengths and
No, the
tools
strengths and
assessment,
needs.
the
That's-
strengths and needs survey that Tara and Liz are gonna finish.
And that's.
It's all
that's-
data.
That's the only thing that was initially, when they
Right.
talked about this requirement, the requirement was to do the strength and needs, participate in that conversation.
And have the
And
conversation,
that's
yeah.
it. Anything beyond that.
But now
is
the
completely
conversation's
optional.
not mandatory, it's voluntary.
Right.
And even once we have that conversation, we are not committed to, how is it, they will not compel us to do anything or compel us to do any of the planned activities that we don't agree to. And then also, if the department or district superintendent, and district superintendent is defined as the BOCES district superintendent in the regulation, just to be clear, because I think that can be confusing sometimes, shall request, not as originally praised, compel the component districts to amend its section of the regionalization plan. So even if the state ed department came or the BOCES superintendent came and said, hey, we think you're not necessarily meeting the goals or the initiatives of what you're talking about in your plan, if we agree to anything, we could take or leave their advice, basically, is how they ended up putting it. So that was the latest amendment to the rule. I don't see it taking away any kind of control, like Harry's still gonna be the until June 30th.
Till June 30th.
The Somer Central School District employee, and he is going to be hired and under the education law, of the Board of Education, so.
And is it possible that some of the identified needs of our district would be picked up by other neighboring districts as part of this?
Maybe.
That's possible.
Sure. Again, being part of the conversation is an important component.
It doesn't cost us anything to be part of the conversation.
Correct.
Because, I mean, from what Neil Boyle was saying, who's the current superintendent of BOCES, Northern Westchester BOCES, it's very similar to work you guys already really have been doing
Right, as
in
I'm-
our region.
In our region, correct. We have a very, very collaborative working relationship with the other 17 districts, other 17 component districts. And as I pointed out in my original comments, the commissioner identified 3 specific superintendents and school districts for the excellent collaborative work they've been doing over the last 5 years. before regionalization
That's
came
like,
up.
so like, what's the need for this if we're already doing what we're doing? Why do we have to go under this regionalization plan if our districts are already doing this?
I think that the point
We're
is
not
that
gaining or losing anything by not doing it. That's what I'm saying.
Well, we could be losing by not doing it, because we're not part of the voice in getting the new information from the other districts as they discuss
Well, I
it.
understand, but we've been dealing with the 17 other districts for how many years now? I mean, we all have a voice with them. It's,
Have supper.
I just don't get why all of a sudden now this is what we're gonna do, and the things that we have already been doing for the past
Again, the state
20
came back
years, 30
with
years.
the
I think
state-
it just formalizes the process a little more than what it was already there.
And we don't know, then it might come out with something that we like. And if it doesn't, then we don't do
No,
anything with it.
if they come up something tied to financial aid or state aid or something, you never know, right? So there's a lot of unknown there.
Right, as I
Even though at
mentioned,
this point we
Districts with more needs than
foundation
us.
aid is an area that may be reduced for the current, for the next school budget.
Yeah.
The trick is I think the idea behind it, the concept behind it in all the memos is that because there is that financial uncertainty with the foundation aid process and the state
foundation,
budgets,
And the new graduation requirements.
and the new graduation requirements that are coming out, I think that they wanted to kind of bring, using the already existing infrastructure of BOCES and kind of formalize the process of, hey, and again, it's a two-step process. Let's talk about what we could do now as school districts together in our regions, and also step two would be, hey, let's get together and advocate what we could to the state, and we could look at what our priorities are in our region we could do something if we had the funding for it, kind of thing. I know that there were several people who are skeptical of how much money or not this could save, and we're not going to know because there's no plan created yet. There's no plan that's coming from the state that says this is what you have to do or not do. There's nobody saying we have to educate someone else's students or not do, because that's a legal process. It's against the law. We're not required to educate other school district students. I think it's just a matter of a conversation, to be honest. I mean,
I'm okay letting it go, moving forward.
so do you guys want to vote on the resolution, or do you want to?
Oh, you mean vote on whether to opt
So
out
the
or not?
resolution would be to opt out of the process. Do you guys want to take a vote, or do you want to just take a straw poll and see where we would go? If it's necessary, I mean, it's up to you.
I say let us move forward.
I'm okay with staying in.
Yeah. I would stay in. I don't see a reason to opt out.
What's the time, well, so we can opt out and,
At any
I don't want to
Don't
get
have to
stuck into
commit,
anything.
no, we're not gonna but the whole point is that they can't, and I went over this with our attorney as well, and Harry was at the meeting as well. We're not committed to do, they can't make us do anything going forward, like any planned activities, even anything that comes in the plan, are not committed to doing anything. We just have to be okay with saying no to school districts if they want to put pressure on us, but I don't see that.
Well,
There's no
when does
pressure.
the foundation aid numbers usually come out? Because I know they did this last year. It seems like they're sort of playing a game till, well, let's see who.
First run usually comes out at the end of January.
So they're wanting to find out how we vote before they decide how much.
Right.
That's
It's a political-
Oh, yeah,
that's where my concern. is.
Originally,
That's why
I hear you.
I understand that.
I don't like how the state's doing it that way.
Yeah.
And if
And I
we were to
think that-
vote, I'm gonna say no, just for,
I don't
just
think,
on
I
that
mean,
purpose.
they only recently gave the option to just,
They did that, they did this last year too.
no,
with
no,
the-
they
the
only
COVID.
recently gave us the option to opt out of the initial needs and strengths and needs.
Right. I
That's
think
what
Don
this,
was
that's what
referring
this is
to
really
the
about.
issue
but-
with foundation aid last year.
Oh, yeah.
They dragged
This has
that
been an
out.
ongoing problem.
Well, there
for-
seems
They
to.
dragged that out.
They
and
seem
did-
to want this, to know where they're going before, it seems very like they're hanging it over our head to see what happens.
I hear you, but you understand that the foundation aid is not tied in any way, shape, or form to any kind of planned or activities. I just want to be clear on that. I don't want to, because we talked about that at the meeting as well. I mean, I think they're looking to say if we could we could maybe save money in the long run as school districts together working on different initiatives, especially with the graduation measures coming out, to make sure that kids have that robust, like, that's their idea behind it. I know
But like
it
you
was
said,
put,
this is things that we have already been doing. You know, and I think at this point where we're at with our district right now, I think this is something we should hold off on and revisit it next year. Especially when we have a new superintendent coming in.
Yeah, but they come out, I mean, this initial conversation is to make a 10-year plan that they revisit in 10 years. So
Yeah,
I'd rather say, you know what, let's just make sure our voice is in on that, see where it goes.
I agree. Keep exploring.
If I had a concern about that kind of a downside to it, of any downside to it, on what we might have to do, I would be speaking up about it. But I've read, I've looked at the regulations, I've heard the notes, heard from, I know we heard from our legal representation, that we're not required. It's just, it's not. So it's not something I'm afraid of, and I think it'd be good to be in on the conversation.
So what we
From the
are
start.
even required to vote?
well, that's
not
why,
required to
we're
vote.
not required to vote, but if we're gonna
We're not.
opt out,
we
we have
have
to
an
vote.
option. We have an option to opt out of the whole thing and not do the strengths and needs.
And if we're gonna opt out, then we have to vote on that as a board.
No, today, do we have to
That's what I'm
vote?
saying.
No, we don't
If we
have
want
to
to
vote.
opt
We don't
out,
have to unless,
That's my
do we have
point.
enough?
It's just, we don't have to do anything.
No, we don't have to do
but if we are gonna opt out, we have to vote on it. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So that's what I wanna get a sense of the board. Do you guys wanna if you wanna opt out, otherwise we don't have to present the resolution at all.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't want to opt out.
Opt out of what?
Opt
Out
out
of
the
doing the
planning.
strengths and needs and the planning.
Opt out
having
of
that
doing
initial
anything
conversation.
related to regionalization. Don't be part of the conversation, don't be part of the
Okay,
planning.
whatever it is, my vote is absentee vote. Simple.
Abstaining.
Okay. Abstain, you mean.
Yeah, abstain.
So Margaret, you're for staying in,
Yes.
Dom, you're out,
I'm out for now.
abstaining, in, out, in. So,
Yeah, so it's, doesn't matter.
That's fine. No,
all right,
Send
That's
them a
fine. We're not-
message, that's it, divided opinion.
okay. So for now, we stay in and,
Staying in.
Let the state do more work, come back with concrete stuff.
well, the state isn't doing the work, that's the point. We are, as a region. And so I believe Neil Boyle's intention is to convene, now because that kept getting pushed because of all these things getting pushed, is to have the convenings in January, February. I think we probably want to find out more.
I have a Lower Hudson Council of School Superintendents meeting on Friday morning.
Okay.
I'm sure that'll be a topic of discussion because that includes representatives from the three BOCES regions, Putnam, Northern Westchester BOCES, Southern Westchester, and Rockland.
Great. If you could update us on that afterwards.
Friday afternoon
Friday
with-
afternoon with
with
the
the
dashboard,
dashboard.
that would be great. And then, because I would think we would want to have opportunities for members of the community to be part of the conversations as well, if possible. Because that's what it sounded like the intention was, so we'd want to advertise that. Okay. Moves us on to our personnel consent agenda, I think, if everyone's good. Okay, resolved that the Board of Education, upon recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, hereby approves the attached personnel agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. This brings us to our second public comment forum. Are there any comments, general comments related, or anything that was on the agenda, I guess now you could also talk about? Anyone from the public wishes to speak? Okay. That brings us then to our board comments.
All right. Stacy, you did a great job. Thank you for your presentation. And I love the handbook. Boy, I could have used that. So thank you.
I mean, thank you for the presentation. I'll memorize it for next year. I missed it. I didn't. But yeah, hope everybody had a good holiday and looking forward to get back to the new year.
Yeah, Stacy, your report is always educational. Personally, I'm not really involved in the special ed that much and has very little understanding, but my heart is in it. So whatever support from your professional point of view telling us, I'll support. Thank you.
Well, it's been a month since we had the last meeting. There's been a number of things that happened. I know the high school drama put on the wonderful version of Clue. That was absolutely spectacular. There were a number of holiday musical concerts that I think everyone who went to those really thoroughly enjoyed. I want to thank the high school student council for the veterans brunch that they did. I know most of us were there, and as a veteran, I certainly appreciated that. That was a wonderful opportunity to get to meet a number of other veterans in the community. And then I noticed something that had been posted, I think a couple of weeks ago, the National STEM Champions, and we had 3 of the New York State 12 finalists in that. And I know Isabella Wissa, Carolyn DeMella, and Anya Karana, and that's absolutely spectacular that we're sending our young, especially women, winning these kind of STEM challenges. I think it's just a wonderful benefit for and really demonstrates that we've got some really quality education and quality students coming out of our STEM programs at the high school.
Mm-hmm.
That's it for me. And thanks, Stacy. Good job as always. And I'm going to memorize those for next year.
So happy New Year to everybody. It's good to be back. Good for the kids to be back. I heard I couldn't go, but I heard the Clue performance went very well. I heard they had a great turnout, and congratulations to all of them. As far as the regionalization thing, we're here for our taxpayers. We're here for our teachers and for our students. I feel that, the aid that we're getting already, we've been getting that from other districts for as long as BOCES has been around. I really think and I really believe that we should have waited on this until next year, until, no offense or anything, but until we have our permanent superintendent. I think we should, like I said, we're not going to lose anything, which I was told that by Betty Rosa and her crew over there. Gaining, I don't know what we're going to gain that we haven't already gained through BOCES. And if there is something gained through this, BOCES isn't going to hold it back for somebody who's not in on this regionalization plan. We're going to keep giving it to us because that's what they're there for. And if there are things in the next year or two that are like, wow, we never knew about these things, this school has this, they never told us about it in the past 17 to 20 years, or it's something new that they're thinking of, we could always jump back in there because that's what they said we could do. So like I said earlier, we're in a transition year. We have a lot more to think about, a lot more to do in our own district, and I just think that this is the wrong time to be involved with this. And like I said, if things turn out, we have our new superintendent, things turn out, the way we want them, and if other things are being put forth by this new program, like I said, we could always assess what is going on with that program in the next 6 months to a year and jump in if we need to. And if it's things that we don't want to get involved in, then we stay out. But, personally, I think we should have waited and seen how we move forward, doing with our superintendent search and getting things together here in our district first.
Yeah, Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome back. I'm sure a lot of mixed feelings. Everyone coming back to school, it's exciting, and at the same time, break was always nice. Good luck. Wish everyone a really happy, healthy semester. Well, not quite end with this semester, but the rest of this year. We had the discussion at the board about the, what's termed the regionalization initiative. I think the consensus is that we're not locked into anything. So I don't see, as we discussed, I really don't see any harm. I think it's better for us to have a voice in the beginning, and then, if there's nothing there for us to benefit from, then there just isn't. And at least we had our voice in it, and we'll see how it moves forward. So, I don't know. I think we're going to be fine. I don't see any risk there. This is a big month because we do have our superintendent search going on, as you know, and you can see information for it on our website. So I'm excited on what the future holds and what we're going to find come from that. I know I have tremendous confidence in our district, tremendous pride in what we offer, tremendous pride in the support that our district, our families, and community give. So there's a lot of really good stuff to work with for anyone out there looking. Bring your best. See you soon.
You're reminding me on that, on this search. I think our website needs to upgrade a little bit, okay? And certainly not divulge any confidential information, but some procedural progress we have to be in there. Otherwise, that website seems to be you click, every day you click the same thing. So what do we have that website for? So we gotta have a little progress in there.
Geez, Ife, we've been out of school for 2 weeks. Like, we haven't had a meeting in a month. Like, I don't know what else
Well, we could have something go in is whenever we can.
Yeah, we did. I
Let
give an
people-
update. I give
It
an
has been
update at every
updated.
meeting, and I was just about to say we're about to go
Do it
into
again. Okay,
interviews
thank you.
soon,
Sorry.
and yeah,
Sorry,
the last.
Take my word back.
We are about to. Happy New Year, everybody, as well. Our superintendent search continues, and we're at the exciting stage of going into starting to interview candidates. So, as discussed, it's a highly confidential process. Only the board members know, and we'll be meeting with potential candidates, but we're very excited. And hopefully, we're not going to have a lot to report in detail for the next month or so, but I think it'll be an exciting few months, and we're always grateful for Harry being here for us for this year. So. Yes. Thank you, Stacy, for your excellent special services report. I appreciate it. It's always interesting to see how our numbers have remained steady in special education, even with our declining enrollment. So that means that in reality, we really have a lot of kids with a lot of needs, and I know it's not always easy, and you've done a great job in navigating all of it. And thank you to the board for a robust discussion on regionalization. I know that it's, we're divided on what we want going forward, but I think overall, if we don't have a seat at the table, there's not much, we can say about it. I don't think it commits us to anything going forward, and it doesn't cost us anything to be a part of the conversation. So, again, it's not about merging. It's not about anyone taking control over us. It's not about BOCES coming in and taking over. It's just a matter of having a conversation and seeing if we can innovate new ideas going forward. And if we're not part of that plan or want to be part of those activities, it becomes then we can't have a say in what that planning is going to be. So yes, we might be able to opt in, but it's not going to be anything that we had a say in. So I feel like it just makes more sense to stay in if it doesn't cost us anything at this time. We had a great community conversation last night at Westchester Putnam School Board Association via Zoom. Met with a lot of different school districts, and I know they're going to send out the notes on that this week, but it was just great to hear how different schools are handling different board procedures and things. So it was a good conversation. I was grateful that we only have 1 to 2 hour meetings, because there were some school districts that were talking about these. How do you not do it in less than 3? And I'm just like, ooh. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm not going to go on much longer so we don't get to that point.
Pushing it.
Pushing it. The Veterans Lunch was wonderful before break. It was so great to see. It was such a student-run and led event, and it was so great that so many of us were able to go and to see that intergenerational mix of the community. It was really special. Before break, I also got to attend several of the concerts around the schools, as well as the high school play. And I have to say, the kids did such an amazing job for 30 days, from casting the production, putting together those sets, and pulling that off for those 3 days. It was absolutely phenomenal, or 2 days, actually, 2 days, 3 performances, 2 days. It was absolutely phenomenal work, so kudos to them. Yeah. I look forward to the Citizens Finance Committee meeting tomorrow.
Lots of good news. Good news expected.
Absolutely.
I'd like to wish everyone a happy new year. Thanks, Stacy, for her presentation this evening. Daryl and Amanda mentioned some of the activities that occurred before the break. Next Wednesday, there is also a band concert at the high school at 7 o'clock, so put that on your calendar if you can. And I too would like to thank the board for their robust discussion of the regionalization initiative tonight. This is a workshop meeting. We have 2 meetings a month, and one is very business oriented, and that's the second one that we'll see on the 21st. And you'll see a lot of items on the agenda. A lot of those are consent items where the board just votes on information that they've received in advance. But this is an opportunity for the board to discuss in public a topic that is important to everyone. I appreciate the amount of time and energy that each board member put into preparing for the presentation and the discussion and attending the meeting with Commissioner Rosa last month. But it's truly an example of what a board should do. And for any of the potential superintendent candidates out there who may be watching this or looking at this afterwards, this is a good example of what a board discussion should look like.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I don't want to. Be it resolved that this Board of Education workshop be adjourned.
So moved.
Do we do any planning, or we're
I think we're okay.
okay? Okay.
Well, unless you want to give me, we
No,
can talk about it in a
that's
minute.
good.
Good or bad?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
By the way.